Welcome to the second discussion of the Mengzi lecture. Last time we were talking a lot about the same things that I think are still important. But this time we have a much stronger overlap with the actual presentation that you were presenting, namely diversity. So diversity is, again, as you said, comes in many different flavors. No one really knows what that means. It has a highly, in Europe and the US, I would say, also a highly ideological undertone, which is not always useful for keeping the discussion straight and scientific. But it is a fact, not in the sense that it exists, it has always existed, but it creates dynamics. That is perhaps new because of globalization. Because, I mean, as long as diversity is located, that's okay, but as soon as it starts to lead to some mixing, then obvious problems occur. There are different opinions, there are different cultures, there are different ways to do things, and that is what's happening, what is hitting now, among other things, it's hitting science. So that has some positive aspects, some negative aspects that I would like to explore with you. You have mentioned a few already, or at least mentioned a few. So how do you see this? Perhaps I start with you as a world traveler, so you have seen different, let's say, how science is done, is carried out in different contexts and different continents. How do you think will diversity impact the content, the methods, and the organization of science in the future?
Yeah, Bernard, I think in my experience of a decade or so of traveling and working with different collaborators from different cultures and teaching as well, and writing for different types of publications as an Indian, I have to emphasize that it has not been easy for me to do cognitive science in India, given the resources, at least not so much of resources, because diversity I have encountered firsthand at multiple levels. And today we are dealing with it as a socio-economic variable, because people have their cultural, civilizational interest. And first and foremost, they're driven by their own belief structures. And later on, they also want to compete at the world stage. So there are two forces operating. One is to harmonize and create general theories and laws about human behavior, mind, and brain. The other one is to also consider the manner in which certain people from certain cultures want to really express and enjoy the benefits of that science. So we see a conflict now. And as per your observation, rightfully so, are we neutralizing the mandate? Because we want to uphold also certain norms, and they have become slightly controversial in journals and discussions, and you have yourself dealt with some of the issues, and I am aware of that. The people really want to do their own thing. I was asked in Berlin at Hommel when I was speaking recently, are you proposing that each person does his own science or psychology, and then how can we have anything common? It was an important question, and it was coming from people that have been in Berlin for a long time, like migrant populations from Turkey and elsewhere. So I said, no. My point is that psychology as a science particularly has to be adaptive, because it has more practical ambitions than natural sciences. Because you can be a bit indifferent with natural science, like making pills and gadgetry, or making spaces. The psychology, brain sciences are ingrained and part of the biological cultural world. So we have to have a balance. So I merely said that. How that balance would be achieved, we still don't know. We are competing for our own little corner. So we are there now. So we don't know really what will happen in the future. But I think that diversity for example, every country has their own journal. So like positive psychology is big in India, maybe Chinese psychology is big in China. So we have different outlets to express our intrinsic opinions. But we want to publish mainstream, then we have to compete with the global audience. And we have to compete with a set norm that we cannot easily defy. So we sometimes end up mimicking. And then we also have issues with infrastructure, facilities, how somebody can produce world-class research given the infrastructure of the country, and then we have to consider that. But as you are rightly indicating, that we cannot trivialize. Like, everybody has a right to know what is first-class science. That right cannot be alienated by ideological talk. I'm a firm believer in that. So whatever I could publish was similar to what Western scientists could do with eye tracking or anything. There was no trivializing. Like I see some of my colleagues trying to, make a little handmade eye tracker or something, and they try to make students believe that you cannot just do it. I don't think that's the right approach. So you can interpret your findings differently depending on your requirement, but you don't have to trivialize the standard that has been set. And psychology is volatile, particularly because it allows this volatility. So I am saying from my point of view, so diversity is already there as an official policy in most journals or in most scientific organizations and in many other domains that we see. But how far this will impact the ethos of science is a question to be explored now, because we never were so serious about it. And now,
So, if let's perhaps begin with the way it is, let's say, implemented in journals, other types of meetings, conferences. So there are many policies, especially in the US, increasingly so in Europe. First, UK as the typically most closest ally to the US, but also it's kind of dribbling through to mid Europe as well. Is that useful? And I'm asking because perhaps I explained a little my thinking behind this. On the one hand, I see, well, it has many implications, but one implication is the distinction between representativeness and example. So let's assume a gender issue. Let's assume we wonder why there are so few astronauts are women. I don't know, perhaps there are many and they just don't make it to the moon or something, but let's assume there are not so many. And you want to change that, and then you may think, oh, but women typically do not, that's not in their standard repertoire. So it's not you don't find many girls, if you ask, what's your next job, and then they say astronaut, that. And then you wonder why and how you can change that. So my idea is always, but that may be wrong, that example is important. So it is important that they know at least one woman who made it. But it is less relevant whether it is 50% of women. So the question is, should we work more on showing at least one example of whatever we find useful in a particular society, or should we go on with these kind of rather technical aspects of, oh, I count, and if I have a discrepancy here, then I'm very worried, and so how do you think about this?
I think this forceful inclusion has become a norm in the moral world, and people are more touchy-feely in some countries because they think that if they don't include sections of people in certain enterprises, then they look morally bad. But nobody has told them so. It's not cast in stone. What should be a moral choice for a conference or a journal editor to include whom? I think the merit of science still holds pretty much true. Whether we have many men or women is a post hoc interpretation only. But you cannot just include as a policy of inclusion, which India does a lot. Because in scientific grants, I can say that in many grant interviews that I have participated, they would always have a blocks, okay, you're from this province, okay, you are this and that, so maybe you should get, maybe that university should get. So this also neutralizes the competence of people that should actually be getting the money. So you can distribute 1 million among 50 people, or you can give 1 million to 5 people that have really proven the worth. So India still struggles with it because they have to report also to the minister, and the minister won't be very happy if it has not been democratically distributed. So I think this compartmentalization is a moral ideological issue more than we have understood what science requires. So we still are not really talking frankly, and I think that important journals are not yet did, although they have a policy of diversity that they are. It's just the way, America, let's say Harvard or Yale would advertise that they are open to anybody, and particularly to such sections who can be an applicant, but how it fares through the final process is a matter of empirical, what Harvard wants. Ultimately it is diabolical, and we just can't be. It's also this sensitivity of the moral dilemma is also a bit Western, too much, rather than it is from other cultures. I would view it with suspicion because I find the same sets of people writing or speaking differently in other scenarios rather than it's a universal, okay. So I think in India also we have people like me who are very open, also a bit critical, and other people who always say that we are not done very well. In the same university, you have people struggling for 20 years, not doing very well, and we also walk the same corridors, and some people have done well. So what we have achieved is more empathy to hear these views, but we also know for sure that the empathy only will not bring material or spiritual progress, because we have to put a system in place, and somewhere we have to draw a line. If a paper is not good, we can't go empathizing on the bad fortunes that the author had. I mean, we can talk to him separately. So I think we can selectively fund, selectively train, we can go, we can discuss, but we have to also state it that the benchmarking is that India follows. I always say that India is a pyramidal structure. Entry is free, but exit is not. Like you can achieve only through your merit. Because however you might want to talk about it, even in the parliament, it won't be holding water. If somebody claims that, okay, I come from this strata, or my forefathers were not treated very well, so no. It's the world of merit still survives, and I've read more recently, a lot of Americans particularly criticizing the meritocratic system, but America is America today because of that system. So it is like talking about yourself having all the attention and wealth of the world as if it has not been earned properly. So I think this is misguiding also a lot of other people who are in the same track.
So you're saying we should keep the criteria, but maybe more open to trying to help people to reach them, and should be more empathetic and more perhaps spend more or share more resources or things like that.
And sometimes, like more recently, the Vice Chancellor of our university had a meeting of the grant holders, and he asked the H-index of people, and people were like, oh, we are not interested in H-index, has problem. The usual talk about, they just don't want to be quantified. But the issue is that the funding depends on your performance, and H-index is not coming easy, however you may measure. So people they want the benefits, they want to ride the bus, but they don't want to be scrutinized. And I am strictly, openly in the university. I'm a senior administrator. I'm going to be the dean of the medical school from January. So lots of 50 faculty would be hobnobbing with me, and the promotions and the students and many. So the trick is to be firm, and the trick is to give them the international outlook, and tell them that you please tell me what is required, rather than going on the criticizing theatre, because that has not helped us. We have to publish in psychological science, it has a certain bar, and I think however you might perceive this, the reality is something else. People who have...
Yeah, that's funny, because, I mean, of course you can criticize, you can jump, like in our dependent measures, you can jump on any criterion, any measure that someone suggests, but typically they are so highly correlated. I've never seen someone who has a very high H-index but published very few papers. It could theoretically happen, but Practically, it typically does not. I have seen very few people who have extremely high indexes, indices, and have are cited very frequently, but have very few grants. So, good people are typically good, and not so good people are typically not so good. And then whatever the weaknesses of every one single parameter might be, I also see the discussion is often having very different motivations. It's not that they really prefer one, so because there is typically no alternative suggestion. It's never that people say, oh, we should not use the H index, but the whatever index. No, they typically want to avoid being judged. And especially I see that I'm in the Academy of Sciences in Germany, and we are in a class together with so disciplines from the humanities. And they're extremely allergic and then I say, but how am I to judge if you make a suggestion? You say this is a fantastic scientist, and you want me to approve that suggestion. What would be my criterion? Please tell me. And then they say, well, you have to read his, typically, book, typically, it's just one, and then you immediately see it's fantastic or not. So, well, if I ask someone to do the same in physics or quantum mechanics, then I would like to see how these people, how easily they read the book and understand how creative it is. So, anyway, but let's get to the possible problem. So people say that the neglect of diversity, which we have witnessed, I mean I think 90% of all participants are still coming from the US, are at the age between 18 and 22. Tend to be female, at least in Europe there is a very, very strong, so the students that are typically tested are 70–80% are female. Now, what is the danger? So, which theories do you expect are wrong because of that?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about psychological science, most important theories did evolve from a certain types of people from the Western world, but they have been pretty generalized as well. Like I have kept getting the same effects from tasks, even from Indians for 15 years now, and they were not radically different at times. So I won't say that these tasks or all these measurements are irrelevant to a different audience.
So they have a Stroop effect.
They have a Stroop, they have the same. So I think cognition, as Chomsky would have said, you have principles and parameters. So you have principles that are pretty universal. So you invest money on creating principles so that actually, see, we talk about absorption of immigrants in Western Europe, and I follow that a lot. And now, how do you absorb? How the host absorbs? There is no absorption. It is to elevate mental states to a similar frequency so that people don't turn criticizing one another and invest a lot of negative energy rather than understanding what's real, what's required in this particular country, rather than trying to have their own set of values. So what I am basically saying is that you have principles and parameters that we carry in our heads. Like I come with parameters of an Indian value system, but I also have principles that are common to all of you. Like we can agree easily on agreeable things. We can disagree if we want to. So I think we want high agreeability among different cultures, and psychology's job is to find out principles that makes people agreeable, irrespective of their value systems. And this is where we are not talking to the point. But if you allow people to just engage with their belief structures, agreeability will be very less, and international cooperation or exchanges or working together will be highly unlikely. So I think how to achieve agreeability while respecting, understanding one another's value or belief structures. Agreeability has to do with the paradigms of science. Like Thomas Kuhn, paradigms of science have been created because humans given to themselves would not be very agreeable. That's our basic nature. We are very comfortable with our worldviews. So paradigms allow, like how CERN, people from 300 countries work together in particle physics. So they don't bring their disagreeability in CERN. But in psychology, sociology, you will find disagreeability has become like some sort of jewelry to wear. Like we have to just disagree. But tasks and like tools that we are using, the same 3-test life MRI you have over here, we have in Delhi. So the machine is the same. But interpretation can be a bit balanced. So there we have to slightly be careful. But I don't want to compromise merit. I don't want to include just for the sake of, this is my view, but some people would vehemently disagree with me in the university why this their way of looking at it. India has neutralized a bit of meritocracy, like India had PhD students to publish 2 or 3 papers before, but India has now gone on to no papers or is fine. So it has allowed a lot of easy strategies for completing PhD, and it's not liked by all the professors, but some people like it. They said that okay, it doesn't really matter if it takes 10 years or no papers. So I think somewhere we are contradictory. The world stage requires us to have set principles, because we just economically speaking we cannot afford a lot of disagreements. But while at a national stage, at a local stage, we can entertain a little bit of discrepancies in belief structures. So we have to deal with these contradictory forces, and I think we are already witnessing it. But we have to keep it to the minimum, because we just cannot have either one of these types. I'm not saying all human beings are same, and that is not how neither plants are same or the differences lie in the adaptability of the parameters. Like if you, and communication languages play a key role, as well as value systems. They could include political ideologies, religions, and ways of life. So cultural anthropologists have long studied this type of thing.
So if you make that concrete, so to take your work, I assume that you will encounter many aspects. You gave us a list of problems, challenges, and so forth. And yes, I mean, I can easily see some of them are more typical for India, that you may not encounter this exactly same thing in Europe, but this need not be relevant. So where could you see that some of the things, some of the type of research you do in this particular context and not elsewhere could have an impact on the data? Where could you think, oh, this perhaps may look different, so the data, that may change the data as compared to the same research in another country, let's say in Luxembourg or something? And where would you say, this is an arbitrary, this is different, but will not have an impact? So do you have, I mean, it's guesswork, I understand, but would you have ideas where it would be more where you would be more worried that perhaps the data would not be as generalizable to any possible other location or culture or type of people?
I don't have much to say on that.
No? You don't, you're not worried, or? So it's more about the organization, about the way research is organized, that may differ, the speed of setting things up, yeah?
Yeah, so I think India has a lot of bureaucracy, and if that is somewhere minimized, like I know they want to ensure that everything is happening on time and happening properly, but I think they lose sight of the ultimate goal. And very often we are then rushing with a lot of things in citing the example of our research in the literacy project, where you are allowed to buy a particular equipment, but it's then taking you so long to get it. So we are rushing in the last year or in the last 2 years, where it's actually quite a long study where we want to see the effects of cognition on the effects of literacy on cognition. So I think if our Indian government and our institutes designed the procedures and designed research to be done in a more seamless manner, I think it will make a lot of things much easier. We can probably look at more factors, more variables to research. Like we just have one variable here to see the aspects of cognition that get improved in participants. But if we have more time, we can probably do a lot more analysis and a lot more data in different ways. We could get them and publish more papers and do it.
Yeah, that makes me a little bit curious, and I would like to afford a little detour, and then I come back to the general theme. But listening to you, I thought, of course, I mean, that resonates. Everyone has examples of that sort. In Germany, it's very common. The Standard Funding Agency, which has a lot of money as compared to most other countries I know, but they keep rejecting things because the German reviewers tend to be extremely risk aversive. So whenever you're not 100% certain what comes out, then they are getting very nervous and they reject. And then I think, but why would you then do the research? If you're 100% certain what comes out, why do you run the study in the first place? I always want to do the study first that I'm the least certain about, because that's the most informative one by definition, because the discrepancy between, anyway. But so I wonder whether we should initiate a new research line that is it's kind of evaluating the actual impact of this. So let's have one procedure like yours, where ministers and many people on the way, they will say, if you ask them, why did you do this? They say, I improved the quality of the proposal and thereby of the research. The question is that empirically true? So if we have a control group where people just accept the first, you have a kind of face validity check perhaps, but then you go straight to, you can actually take your apparatus and bring it straight to the university. And if you compare the two groups, the question is whether the research after 2 years will differ. And I wonder whether that might not be an interesting research line to empirically test the proposed scientific value of administrative accuracy. But yeah, that may be too much science fiction for the time being.
I think we need evidence-based assessment.
Yeah. Yes.
Both at the level of policy
Of the assessment. So it's a meta science.
So where we are stopping now is just with the intervention and its outcomes. Well, we are not assessing whether there is any long-term gain.
Yes.
We're leaving and moving on to new projects.
Yes.
So in India, most projects are government projects are for 3 years, and in 3 years' time, you have to present a report and you have to show some papers. There are urgencies. So I think, as you were suggesting, we should be more freer in tackling real issues such as literacy or any other mental health issues, and that requires a different kind of bureaucratic approach. But unfortunately, developing countries can't afford that kind of time because they are accountable to also the lending agencies that give money for us to do research. So it's a long chain of commitments.
They are basically justifying their own existence, which is a sociological topic. I'm a big fan of Luhmann, who explains that these systems have this tendency to reconfirm or to kind of approve their existence every time they're working.
In the bureaucratic or the science bureaucratic hierarchy, each person has a set mandate to play, and each person satisfies somebody who is below him or her. That more or less there is a gross certification of everything being correct, and then you move on. And as the project ends, then you get a new project. So actually, I at times would be not be confident in the awards and honors and various things that are given to also in, they are justified in the true sense of the justification, because they are often also a sociological phenomena of just like we have other cultural phenomena, just like religious festivals. So this year we have to find 10 people, irrespective of whatever. We can cross over, and then some people would make some noise, but we can get over that too. So it happens quite a bit in India.
Okay, so let's but now I get back. So Researchers in the world, if you're interested in this, let's think about a new discipline, which is the scientific assessment of scientific assessment. Okay, back to, I don't want to let you go because you mentioned that without saying too many things about it. Namely, what is the role of artificial intelligence for research? Of course, I mean, we don't need to talk about the use of it. There are policies in place, I understand that journals do not allow, let's say, AI to write our papers. They should certainly not invent our data. So I think we can easily agree on all that. But is there a deeper, are there other options that are more interesting, more intellectually inspiring, where AI may change the way we study the humans?
It seems to me that the suggestive power of AI is tremendous, and when you are exposed to these vast suggestions, they are very different from what teachers used to do in classroom, or they are very different from Google even. Google 3 of random, but this curated suggestions of AI can actually be mimicked by a lot of humans, and they probably would be losing their own creative ability to assimilate facts and propose theories. So because everything is being proposed, both pros and cons by the AI, particularly ChatGPT, if you indulge with it for an hour or so on a topic, you would have this simulated thinking strategy, like, okay, that could be true. So AI eventually, if humans overindulge for more than information seeking, if they use AI as a partner in thinking, then they're going to lose a little bit, at least, of that creative potential, for which we have been struggling so hard for the last 50 years. Like how the human mind can project ideas that were never before there. So AI is only able to tell you what is there and a little generalization on it, but leaving again you to be the judge. So
can I challenge you, just making this up, but let's assume we program AI to be the devil's advocate, to attack. So if I start saying, I'm starting to communicate, so basically I would, in this case, I would have the role of trying to defend my theory, and let's assume I'm self-critical, and let's assume I want the theory to be right and strong, and I want to try out. Now typically, you know that this is very hard, because in your lab, there are only believers, okay? If you say, I wrote this article, can you smash it? There you will find very few volunteers because they may not have the background, they may not dare to get rid of their job if you dislike their criticism too much and so forth. So that's easy, and colleagues may just be too little interested in this and may go to their own way. This is my experience. I always thought that when I was young, I was thinking, I just have to have a good idea, and then I share it, and then everyone goes like, yeah, this is a smart guy. And it never happened, because all the colleagues, especially the older colleagues, kind of turned around and say, but here's my theory, so what do you want? And then you don't get into any real discussion. So the only thing you can hope is to impact the next generation, so people who still have questions. But you should not assume that you can convince people who think they have no longer questions. But let's try to replace these people who will not function well by AI. Let's do the chat GPT or whatever approach you may choose to program to try the hardest to challenge you. So even if you say, oh, the earth is round, this program should say, wait, how about this evidence and this and this? So what if we program it to challenge us as much as possible, but on logical grounds, using all the interpretational space, but based on facts. So in other words, can we build a devil's advocate, and would that improve our own thinking?
It's quite possible. First of all, AI has access to a lot more data than humans will ever get their hands on.
Mhm.
And second, it has its own interpretative strategy, which facts hang together. And it also probably in future would have a belief structure of its own. Like some things,
Yes.
it would start,
Yeah.
liking people culturally, what Indians like, Chinese like, and
Yes.
to hear more on an issue whenever a question is coming, just the way, it would probably develop a bit of political correctness in its answer giving strategy. So you are right in using AI as a learning tool is probably the way out, and we have to be very clear about what that learning, it's non-traditional, and what are the challenges that anybody would expect in that learning. Since humans also look at the world in a theory-laden way, and humans are probably the only creature that absolutely don't regard facts or their subjective feelings about facts, and AI is going to be the opposite.
Mhm.
AI is not going to really tell me nice things because I would like to hear it will tell me the statistical facts. So in that way I can tune down a little bit. And I'm quite sure that even government agencies are going to have AI as consultative tools very soon, probably in India. It won't be explicit in the beginning, but it would play a key role rather than having advisors and other people to have subjective opinions, because it's probably. So I think we can use it in that way. But the fear is again the fear that humans always would have, whether it is really more intelligent than me and is judging me and is likely humiliating me certainly, and there are lots of people who are interested in the language of AI because it can also say things that we would not like to hear, because we want advice and suggestions and interpretation in a certain manner, just not facts. Because that's why we have human beings talking to us about facts. We don't want an AI that has no agency and identity to give us facts and not taking responsibility. So ultimately we will run to a human being, and then AI is merely a tool used by multiple human beings, and who would, but nobody can speculate for where we are heading, unless until it becomes an epidemic and large-scale usage. And there are ethics in place already. European Commission has set up an ethics on AI, that how AI should behave. The behavior of AI, humans will control, and this is all also part of the technological progress.
Yeah, I mean, this is indeed what annoys me most about AI, is that it is too agreeable. So it always tries to be, it's super, the version I have is super woke. So it's always saying, yeah, you cannot judge people and you must be careful, and so I think, oh my God, I want to be challenged, I want to, anyway, but let me give it one more try to see whether we can, let's say, have modes or reprogrammed AI that we could use for more interesting purposes, to get really more, to become smarter and more diverse in our thinking. So here's one ad hoc possibility. I had a good friend who died later, with whom I was preparing for almost all the exams. Most of our exams at the university in psychology were oral. So, and we always did that as two people, because we were friends. So we tried to learn together, to read the books together, to practice arguing about it, taking different positions and stuff like that, a little bit role playing. But also because we were totally opposite personalities. So he was sleeping very, very badly before the examination, but when it started, he was super calm, perhaps because he didn't sleep well, super calm and could answer very easily and was very relaxed and so forth and so on, whereas I'm the opposite. I could sleep very well, and then I would wake up, and then I would think, and now what do? I go to the examination. And then I'm going like this, and the closer we got to the room, the more nervous I got. So we loved to be two, because he would start the discussion, And he would buy me out time for relaxing and adjusting to the situation. And then I would grow and grow and grow, and then I would take over, and then we challenge each other and so forth. So it was, the examinators had nothing to do. They would just watch our back and forth, and they were happy with it because we showed that we know what we are talking about. And I had, when you sit together for such a long time, you prepare for all these examinations, there you have arguments. You're getting moody and whatever, so sometimes we shouted at each other, and very brutally and aggressively so. You're young, you have all the energy, you don't have the knowledge that you later get to make things relative. So we clashed. And then we learned to kind of, let's say, sit in different spaces for half an hour, and then we try to understand it. Okay, we disagree, we understand that, but I'm interested in why is that? So where do you come from to say this? And then if you get back and back and back in time, what is the assumption for that? What motivates you to say that? What is the precondition, and so forth and so on? Then we did not come up with the same opinion, but I understood how, if you think this way, why you would ever say that. And that I didn't get before. And that I could imagine would be a good job for a good AI machine. That it would try to, through interactions, if there are two people coming up with very different opinions, to get behind it and to dig deeper and deeper and deeper until it gets an understanding of why it is logically necessary and understandable that they reach these different ones, but only because they come from different places. And that, I think, could be an educational way to deal with our disagreements, even worldwide, much better. Because if you dig deeper, then you always see why people end up with different, let's take, I don't know, Israel, Palestine. If you get back in time, then you understand, I cannot understand how you could not understand both parties without justifying anything. So could that be not a good, very cool tool to...
Certainly, I think I refer to the usefulness of AI as a comprehensive knowledge-based tool that humans should use to their advantage, while the human natural biases, like Kahneman would say, the irrationality, and there are books now on irrationality more than rationality. So I came across a couple of books on irrationality. We are all irrational, but our irrationality has evolutionarily decreased, otherwise we would not have come this far. And AI can help it decrease further, so that we really can compartmentalize our values, beliefs, and morally what is wrong, or what lands we want to settle in, and the facts that should be respected. Because honoring facts would probably go a long way in making probably us even a continuing species. Because irrationality can lead to, there are thinkers who are writing about how people have impaired their chances of survival by just being too emotional about some things and not really grounded to facts. So one of the main contributions of AI, large language models and more other versions of AI, would be to present arguments and facts and train humans in such a way that they would be more realistic to the problems, and a different attitude would develop towards histories. Because a lot of the conflicts that you are referring to are historical, but people at those who are at the front, they are not talking historically. They want to have a solution to the current whims and fences, like the party in power or the commitments they have made to the people. And so AI will not understand issues in this way. So AI will, if you pit all the data, pit everything actually, that they will come up with potential solutions, which we might agree or not agree. So it will up to us, as the people would say that you can switch it off and it's all gone.
But could we personalize it? Let's say if you are, let's say, if an AI is more closely living with you and watching you, experiencing you over time, then it may act more like an advisor and say, well, you know,
Yeah.
this was irrational, wasn't it? Come on, be serious. Last week you said this, now you say this. It's not cool. I understand. You were getting angry, but could you count till 10 and then rethink again? So wouldn't that be cool to have a machine like that?
Going to it there, I think we will have AI-based intervention gadgets attached to the body that kind of speaks to us or transmits messages, so that we don't have biased human therapists. And a lot of biases can be induced by other humans who are trying to tell us what we should do, and that is probably one of the futures where technology and a lot of activities can happen. And humans will be, if you see, one of our prime necessities is to find somebody like us. And that is not going to be fulfilled. We also know why it is not going to be fulfilled. But if AI looks like someone who suggests hourly the kind of desires I am having over a period of time and has good understanding, I think it's perfectly fine for me to accept it, even if it is non-human, as a partner in my thought process, and I would obey and respect its views more than the human that I have to convince to elicit agreeable patterns, which we do not want, because it costs a lot of energy. So, by understanding me over a period of time, by being acquainted with my behavioral patterns, it can also tell me to what extent my statistics is dispersed from the general goodness, which I do not know at the moment. I may think that I'm really intelligent. I really have a view on the world. But then AI would tell that, so far you have done well, and looks like you can do a little better, and here are other humans like you, and here's a network.
And I mean well, So it's on your side.
So in this way, it's an intelligent partner that actually is beneficial to me and can stop also some of my bad intentions as they arise. But that would be a long way, because we will have the ethics. Again, the committees and people that really are on the ethics side of it would say that human can get too motivated and would leave other humans. And that's the danger.
Ethics are the death of science. But anyway, thank you very much for coming and visiting us, for sharing your thoughts. The future is bright.